When it comes to testing components, Snap-on delivers a real advantage. Introducing Vantage Pro, the latest innovation in advanced component testing technology from Snap-on. We started with the industry's leading multimeter, the MT2400 Vantage Power Graphing Meter, and redesigned it, incorporating component test and instrumentation technology from the Modus system. The Vantage Pro can do everything the MT2400 Vantage can do and much more. It's a full-color graphing multimeter with a true 2-channel lab scope built in. This advanced instrumentation is combined with a vast database of tips and component testing procedures that are specific to vehicle manufacture, model, and year of production. Test components like an expert from the very first time you turn on your Vantage Pro. Identify the vehicle system and component you're diagnosing, and Vantage Pro guides you through the vehicle-specific tests, starting with the most powerful tests. Component information is right on the display, including component location, operation, and connector and pin out information, so you get a dependable pattern or reading on the screen fast. Vantage Pro even provides expected readings and known good patterns for comparison. With these advanced diagnostics at your fingertips, you can confirm that a part is bad before you replace it. That's good for your customers and good for business. Built-in information also includes interactive no start, electronic, ignition, current ramping, and O2 sensor instruction. And that means you can enhance your knowledge while getting the most from your investment. Vantage Pro is also a high-end lab scope, capturing up to 8 megasamples per second with a fast time base. This allows you to see fast signals on today's advanced vehicles, including CAN bus signals. Vantage Pro is also a full-featured ignition scope, including multiple secondary ignition views. Use it with the optional SIA 2000 for multiple secondary capabilities on waste spark systems. Top techs know that trouble codes don't always tell the whole story when it comes to components. So ask your Snap-on dealer about Vantage Pro today and find out why the best always test with the best. Modus, Solus, and Vantage Pro. Hello, and welcome to the Vantage Pro Hands-On Training DVD. In this video, we'll be showing you how to use the Snap-on Vantage Pro, the new innovation in advanced component testing technology from the folks at Snap-on. The Vantage Pro is a redesign of the popular MT2400 Vantage Power Graphing Meter, the industry's leading multimeter. The Vantage Pro can do everything the MT2400 Vantage can do and more. This is a full-color graphing multimeter with a true 2-channel lab scope built in. There's also a vast database of tips and component testing procedures that are specific to manufacturer, model, and year of production. By the end of this video, you'll understand the Vantage Pro's range of capabilities and why it'll become any technician's best friend. The first thing we're going to do is go over the general controls, features, and accessories of the Vantage Pro. Then we'll roll up our sleeves and do some testing. We'll show you real-world scenarios on how to get the most out of your Vantage Pro. The first thing you'll notice is how familiar this tool feels. If you used other Snap-on diagnostic tools such as the scanner, Vantage, Modus, or the Solus, you'll be right at home with the time-tested interface. You've got hand grips on both sides. And next to the right hand grip, you've got the control area with a thumb pad, yes and no buttons, the brightness contrast button, and the special function button that you can customize to your needs. And below the full color screen is the power button. On top of the unit, there are 2 compact flash card slots. You'll be using these to store saved data and also to update the Vantage Pro when updates are available. Next to that is a USB port for hooking up a keyboard, printer, or other supported devices. Next to that are the connectors for test leads. Next to those is an auxiliary connector port. This is where you'll hook up the optional pressure and vacuum transducers, split lead adapter, or inductive RPM pickup. And at the end is a DC jack for connecting an alternative source of power. On the back of the unit, there's a stand that can be used in a variety of ways. For handheld testing, the stand can be locked to the unit, or you can extend it to a 45-degree angle for hands-free viewing. You can also extend it completely and hang your Vantage Pro, a handy feature that keeps the unit at a viewable height and away from moving parts around the engine compartment. Also on the back is the user-replaceable 10-amp fuse. Your Vantage Pro comes standard with test leads, alligator clips, a rechargeable internal battery with its own battery charger, and power adapter. Now turn it on and look at our main menu. Feel free to follow along on your Vantage Pro. This is the main menu. It's your home base for operations. Along the left side, you'll notice a series of buttons. Each one accesses a menu with different testing options. The first button is the Info button, where you access all of your component testing options. Below that is the Multimeter button, which lets you choose between graphing or digital meters, followed by the Scope button, with all your lab and ignition scope options, the Saved Data button for managing your data captures, and the Utilities button, where you can customize your tool setup options and access the tool help, among other things. Let's take a look at some of these important settings before we go any further. To navigate menus, all we have to do is move the highlight with the thumb pad, make selections by pressing the Y or Yes button, and go back or cancel by pressing the N or No button. System Info provides detailed information on the software currently installed. Run provides a shortcut to authorized applications that may be available. Software Update may be necessary when installing future software. Easy Scroll lets you use only the thumb pad to highlight and select an item. With Easy Scroll turned on, the right and left arrows function as yes and no, allowing for faster navigation. To demonstrate this, we will activate Easy Scroll by pressing Y. We see a check mark appear to the left, indicating this option is now on. We arrow up to Tool Help, and when we arrow right, this works like the Y button and takes us directly into Tool Help. We can move down to Scope Operations, arrow right to use Easy Scroll for the selection, and we can see that Tool Help puts tool operation guidelines right in your hands. Under Tool Setup, we have Units, used to change the units of measurement for vacuum and pressure tests and whether the values apply to each division or the full screen scale. Ignition System provides setup parameters for the vehicle you are testing, including ignition type, number of cylinders, firing order, and trigger. Power Management allows you to customize the time between your last activity on the tool, the backlight going off, and the tool going into standby. Once in standby, the unit will turn off based on the time selected in this field. If the battery is getting low, the unit will turn off from standby sooner than the time selected. A couple of important things to remember. While in standby, you can continue to capture your measurements and snapshots, but only up to the time selected for turn off, as the unit will still power down. If making long recordings, you'll want to use external power. When using external power, the power management options are overridden. The backlight will remain on, and the unit will stay powered on until manually turning the unit off or removing external power. You can also put the unit into standby manually by pressing the power button and selecting standby. Save Data is where you choose what percentage of your snapshot you want to capture after the snapshot was triggered. By default, this is set to 30%, meaning that 70% of the captured data will be what happened before the snapshot was triggered, and 30% will be data after the trigger. The movie size will be the maximum buffer unless you stop the capture manually. The printer setup allows you to select either a black and white or color PCL3 compatible printer. Printing is done through the USB port. You can use any printer that is PCL3 or higher, such as some of the popular HP inkjet and LaserJet printers. Set the date and time here in Tool Setup. The time appears at the bottom of the screen, and this information is used in your saved file properties. The Snap-on S button is very handy. You can choose what you want it to do. Function as a shortcut to print, freeze or run data capture, or save the current screen as a bitmap. So now, the Vantage Pro is powered up and we've covered some basic functions. In the next section, we'll do some component testing. Our first case study involves a 2001 3.5-liter Acura RL. The vehicle came in and we used our Solus scanner to pull a P0106 code. This indicates a map sensor performance or range problem. To find out whether to condemn the part, we'll use Vantage Pro to take a closer look at the map sensor. This will give us a better look at the sensor than relying on the information being processed by the computer. The first step to testing components with the Vantage Pro is identifying the test vehicle. As I mentioned before, all of your component testing options are available from the Info button at the top of the main menu. The Info menu gives us two options for vehicle identification: previous vehicles, to work on one of the last 10 vehicles identified, or New Vehicle ID, to select a new vehicle. We're going to ID this Acura for the first time, so select New Vehicle ID. For vehicles not in the extensive database, you have the choice to get generic component tests. To do this, select New Vehicle, Imports, and scroll to Generic, All Others. This provides access to 131 tests for 46 vehicle components. Now, let's get to the map sensor on this vehicle. New Vehicle brings up a series of menus, prompting you through the identification process. Our test vehicle is a 2001 Acura RL 3.5 liter. So we'll select Imports, then Acura, Fuel Injected for system type, 2001 RL for model, and then Yes to accept the identification. Now you'll notice that in the status bar at the bottom of the screen, we have the vehicle we've just entered, reminding us what we've selected. All of our component test options available are specific to the vehicle in the status bar. Since we want to test the map sensor, we'll scroll to that in the alphabetized list. Now that the Vantage Pro knows which vehicle we're working on and what component to test, it gives a list of tests available for that component, and also a component information option. Before we go to the test, let's take a minute to look at the information screen. The component information screen has multiple windows, each containing different types of information about the component you want to test, allowing you to do some research before you go testing, in case you're not familiar with the components on that particular vehicle. At the top left, we have an operation window. And if we open that, we can read a brief description of what the component does. We can arrow down to highlight the window and press Y to maximize the window. With the information provided, you can see that the map is a 3-wire sensor that measures intake manifold pressure. Vantage Pro provides a detailed description of the component's normal operation. Next to that is the connector window, which shows you the appropriate connector for the component test and includes a pinout for reference. Always be sure to pay close attention to the words at the top of the window after View. These words are not always the same. There are actually 4 different possibilities for the wording we use. They are harness side back probing, like we see here, sensor side back probing, disconnected harness side, and disconnected sensor side. Each one gives a different point of reference for the connector picture and pinout information. In the bottom left panel is the location window. This window not only tells you where the component is located, but also gives you the best test location for cases where it might not be necessary to get to the actual component if there is a more accessible location. An additional tip in the lower right panel, Tech Notes, reminds us to repair all vacuum leaks before testing the map and provides other important repair tips. Now that we know a few things about the map, let's go back to the component menu so we can start testing. To do this, press N to get back to the top menu where we have a print icon, and then press N again to return to the component menu. When Tests is selected, we get a menu of the different tests available for that component. Let's select Voltage Test, which launches the Component Tests screen. We can see that the instrumentation portion of the screen has been configured for us. We have a graph and a digital view of our data. Channel 1 is on. The scale is set to 5 volts, and the time base, which is the full screen sweep, is 2 seconds. We have full control of all these options and more. Before we go any further, let's take a minute to look at the Component Tests screen. At the top is the upper toolbar, which has controls for how data displays and for storing your screen captures. Below that are the test procedure windows, which take you through the test you've selected and are very similar to the component information screens we just looked at. Below that is where all of your test data displays. And below that is the status bar you saw on the main menu. Let's get properly connected. Sometimes that's half the battle. Get some data on the screen, and we'll come back to review the functions of the upper and lower toolbars. Remember, to move into the voltage test information pane, we arrow down once and press Y to highlight the information box. We can now scroll up and down through the instructions using the thumb pad. We can leave this pane by pressing N, which removes the blue highlighting, and move right to the connector view, or up or down to the toolbars. Following the information in the top 2 panes, we see that the Channel 1 yellow lead should be attached to the map signal, which is the red with green wire. We then connect the black to a good ground. Reading on, we see that Vantage Pro tells us that with the key on, engine off, the voltage measurement should be 2.9 volts at sea level. With key on, engine running, warm idle, and 20 inches of engine vacuum, voltage should be below 1 volt. As vacuum decreases, voltage should increase. The Vantage Pro tells us that voltage changes should be smooth, with no dropouts or glitches. The last advice it provides is that a snap throttle test should produce a waveform similar to the one shown on the tool. In this case, we have confirmed that the map is operating properly at this time. There's no need to replace this part. Let's review the functions of the upper and lower toolbars. On the top toolbar, starting from the left, we have the View icon. This allows us to toggle between digital, graph, and split screen data display. The Freeze icon allows us to stop recording and review the data that has been collected. Once the data is paused, or frozen, this icon changes to a Play icon, which restarts the capture of data. We'll leave the data capture paused for now while we look at some other features. The Review icon is available when reviewing paused data or a snapshot of recorded data. Pressing Y once on this icon allows us to scroll screen by screen through the continuously recorded data. As we do this, we can see the current frame number in the data buffer position indicator. Pressing Y again on the Review icon provides the 3 options for review: the manual scroll we just utilized, and 2 automatic playback modes, fast and slow. With a 20-second time base and Vantage Pro's capability to store over 1,000 continuous screens, you can see that the buffering capabilities are pretty impressive. The next icon is for cursors. Pressing Y on this icon turns on the cursors. We can now use the left and right arrows to move cursor 1 into position. Once set, press Y to toggle to cursor 2 and set its position. Pressing N allows us to remove the cursors or leave them in place while we move on to other functions. Next, we have the zoom icon, which enables you to back your view out to see more screens of data on the display at one time. The magnitude you can zoom out will depend on the number of screens saved. The save icon allows you to save the current screen or all screens. When you save all screens or a single screen, you have the ability to capture detailed information about the file being saved. Vantage Pro provides year, make, component, and condition fields to make it easier for you to reference these files in the future. The last option under Save is Preset. This saves your current instrument settings as a preset for future use. This is a valuable feature, especially when a similar test is needed again. The Print icon allows you to print the entire screen or one of the information panes. In Setup, you can customize the instrument display by choosing units of measure and turning on or off the grid and scales display. The last option in this menu is Inverse Colors. This switches the background and foreground colors in the instrument panel. This is nice for different lighting conditions and for printing, if you don't want to print a large black box for the instrument panel each time. If we go back and resume data capture by selecting the Run icon, we see a couple of different icons along the top toolbar. The camera icon activates the snapshot feature. Selecting this icon and Manual Snapshot, the tool is standing by to save your buffer data after you press Y. It's important to remember that the amount of data saved before you select Y and after you select Y is the percentage we set in Save Data in the Utilities menu on the main screen. You can press Y to manually stop the collection of data or let the recording continue until the buffer is filled. The Reset icon in the Setup menu clears the min-max values previously seen by the tool. Located just below the top toolbar is the Data Buffer. This indicates how much test data is stored and shows your frame reference when you're reviewing data. Once filled, the oldest data in the buffer is replaced with new data. The lower toolbar provides easy access to instrument settings. These options will vary depending on the instrument being used. Let's review the options available for the graphing meter used for this map sensor test. The first icon on the left provides access to the channels. By selecting this icon, we can see we have access to functions for Channel 1 and Channel 2. For this test, Channel 2 is not displayed. We can confirm this by highlighting Channel 2, arrow to the right, and confirm that there is no check mark by the displayed option. To turn Channel 2 on, we select Displayed. See that a check mark appears, and the setting and readings for this channel are now displayed. Selecting Displayed again will turn this channel back off. Other options available for each of these channels are Inverted, which flips the pattern upside down. A nice option for looking at secondary waste spark readings or low amps readings, so you don't have to manually turn the probe around. Coupling AC is often used for viewing alternator ripple or fuel pump amps to highlight small variations in the pattern by subtracting the average value of the waveform. This blocks the DC portion of the signal, amplifying the AC portion while moving the signal off the center of the screen. Peak Detect ensures that fast events, spikes, and glitches are displayed on the screen. This is a snap-on patented technology that helps you find faults that other instruments might miss. Filter minimizes unwanted noise in the signal. Auto Find will pick the best vertical scale to fit the pattern on the screen. When run on the same channel as the trigger, The trigger level is set halfway between the minimum and maximum values of the waveform. The probe icon lets you identify a different test lead being used. The scale button lets you select a measurement scale for each channel. Remember that this scale applies to the entire vertical scale, which in this case is 2 divisions. So a 5-volt scale will be 2.5 volts per division. Since the icons along the bottom are yellow, the settings we are viewing will apply to channel 1. To make changes to channel 2, we must go back to the channel button and choose channel 2. If channel 2 is not currently being displayed, the tool will give us the option to turn it on at this time. This is a good time to remind you that with Easy Scroll turned on in the tool setup area of the main menu, some of these selections can be made without using the Y button, simply by moving to the button and using the arrows to make a selection. The 0 channel offset button allows us to move our signal up or down in the display window. Simply select the button and move the arrows up and down to change the vertical location of your scale. The threshold button is used only for calculating measurements like frequency, duty cycle, dwell, and pulse width. When available, there are auto and manual options for this function. The Sweep button allows us to choose the amount of time displayed across the entire screen. This screen has 5 horizontal divisions, so 2 seconds is the equivalent of 400 milliseconds per division, as indicated on the screen when the scales are displayed. That covers the functions available for this map sensor voltage test. With all the different settings available for each instrument, think how much time you'll save by having Vantage Pro configure the screen for you. Now let's move on to a 1997 Toyota Land Cruiser that came in on the hook. We've used the Solus scanner to check for trouble codes, and there is a confirmed P0385 code, indicating that the ECM does not detect a signal from crankshaft position sensor B during cranking. To get to the component test, let's identify the vehicle. Go to New Vehicle ID. Select Imports and Toyota. Notice the System Type menu appears next. This is where you can go to other system tests apart from the engine. In this case, we see ABS, charging system, and transmission system component tests. We'll continue to crankshaft position sensor test by choosing EFI systems. And Land Cruiser. We confirm that this is the 4.5-liter L6 and confirm the vehicle identification. Now scroll up to Component Tests and down to Crankshaft Position Sensor. The first thing we notice is that this vehicle is equipped with 2 crankshaft position sensors. We'll choose number 2 since this is the component that is related to the code. Under Component Information, we can read more about this component and its expected operation, along with connector diagram and test location information. The first test recommended for this CKP is a key-on engine cranking test. Every test's menu is set up with the best and/or most informative test first, and the rest of the tests listed in a descending order of priority. Just remember that the key-on engine cranking tests listed on the engine components are meant primarily for no-start applications. And if you perform the rest of the tests in the order that they are provided, without skipping any, you'll gain diagnostic insight. We'll select this option, and the test will be loaded. We'll get all the required information to connect correctly, and we even have the tooth count information and a sample view of the gap. This test is utilizing lab scope instrumentation, but after getting connected and cranking the engine, we see that there is no signal from the component. We can back up to our list of available tests and select the No Signal Out of Range test. This will confirm whether we have a signal to the component and allow us to check whether the component is to blame or if we have a problem somewhere else. Following the on-screen instructions to check for an open in the component quickly confirms that the part is confirmed bad. If we want, we can use the information provided in the connector view to check for wiring back to the ECM. Vantage Pro includes ECM location and pinout information right in the component menu. We will now replace the crank position sensor and confirm the repair by going back to the initial crank test. We will reconnect the leads for the test, crank the engine, and see if the vehicle starts. And we have success. We can see the pattern on the display matches our reference waveform. The lab scope provides a couple of different functions compared to the graphing meter we used on the Acura map sensor. We have different sweep time bases and trigger configuration. For this test, the trigger is set up for us, but we have the ability to change the settings, such as which channel is triggered, either a manual trigger, which does not update the screen with a waveform unless the trigger is crossed, or the auto option, which does update the screen periodically with the current readings, even if the trigger is not being crossed. You also have the choice to trigger on a rising or falling slope, and to manually move the trigger location using the thumb pad. Now that we have lab scope data filling our buffer, we can pause, review, and zoom out on the data that has been captured. We can press N to return to the top toolbar and then scroll to the pause button. As soon as we select pause, we can see that the scroll buffer reference is at frame 0. Selecting the review button allows you to move frame by frame through the data. We can also play back the buffered data using the scroll fast or scroll slow options. By zooming out, we can see continuous frames or screens of data put together. This might make it easier to identify a glitch when a large amount of data has been captured. Put the reference marker on a suspected area of data and zoom back in on that particular screen or screens. This shows the power of the Vantage Pro data storage and playback capabilities. Similar data review capabilities are available when capturing a snapshot. Let's try that now. We'll return to Live Data Capture. Select Manual Snapshot and press Y to start the recording process. The snapshot is now available in the Saved Data section on the main menu. We'll press No a couple of times to return to the main menu and move down to Saved Data and select Data Management. The snapshot just recorded is automatically given a name and the date and time of capture is noted. Once we find this file, we can scroll right to highlight and select the Edit button. Like saving screens, this allows us to identify the year, make, component, and condition information for this file. If you have a USB keyboard plugged in, you can even add a note for this file. This toolbar also provides options to delete files and copy or move files between compact flash cards, and select all files for faster copying or moving of all files. It's important to note that you can only see files contained on one compact flash at a time. If a file seems to be missing, it might be saved on the other CF card. We can now open the snapshot we recorded and use the same review and zoom functions to review the captured data. The zoom menu shows a multiplier that is the equivalent of putting that many screens or frames on the display at one time. So, 256X will display 256 continuous screens of data on your Vantage Pro. While we're under the hood of this Toyota, let's take a quick look at how easy some common testing becomes with Vantage Pro. Low amps testing is very popular these days, and using the built-in tests makes this even easier. Let's choose Injector from our Component Tests menu. Go straight to Tests, and at the bottom of the list we see Current Ramp Test. This test uses the optional Snap-on Low Amps probe. As we follow along with the test procedure instructions, we see that additional information is available by arrowing to the right. This is what is referred to as a jump bar. This provides detailed instructions for using the low amps probe along with conversion charts. Using the inline fuse harness, we can check the injectors with one quick test. This test highlights shorted or open injectors, bad wiring, or a defective PCM. We can also test individual injectors by placing our probe around each ignition wire. Again, Vantage Pro provides a sample waveform for comparison. It is this information with instrumentation that makes the tool so powerful. Of course, Vantage Pro also provides full multimeter and lab scope instrumentation. Let's take a quick look at these tools. If you're familiar with lab scope and multimeter usage and don't need step-by-step instructions, you might want to go straight to multimeter or lab scope. In multimeter, we have graphing and digital options. Digital meter gives us 3 unique voltage measurements, ohms measurements for electrical resistance, diode or continuity, which measures voltage drop, internal amps, which measures current for component and parasitic draws, and low amps for use with the optional Snap-on Low Amps probe. Above that is a graphing multimeter. This provides graphed data including volts, frequency, pulse width, injector, mixture control dwell, duty cycle, low amps, and our pressure or vacuum transducers. Selecting scope takes you to our full-blown 2-channel lab scope. The settings are the same as we discussed in the component test case studies. Vantage Pro also has an ignition scope, which provides parade, cylinder, raster, superimposed, and single cylinder views. The optional SIA 2000 adapter can be used for multiple cylinders on waste spark and direct ignition systems. Below ignition scope settings, we have presets. These are factory presets for your lab scope. Remember, like saved data, if you do go to the factory preset screen and you don't see presets listed, it might be because you have a compact flash card inserted in the CF2 slot. There are presets for different probes, number of channels, diode ripple, fuel pump current flow, ground injectors and solenoids, high frequency signals, both AC and digital, O2 sensor settings, injectors, and more. These help speed up your testing and allow you to create, save, and share your own presets. In the Info section, Vantage Pro also offers power user tests with or without on-screen help. These tests provide pre-configured setups for testing related components and signals. This program has provided an overview of basic Vantage Pro operation. There's a lot more to the tool than we discussed here. By using your Vantage Pro regularly, your skills will continue to improve. Good luck with your new Snap-on Vantage Pro.